Yeah, still good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be over here as part of the Nutrify Summit. I would first like to thank Nutrify today for consistently executing this and providing us a framework of interaction and learning. It's not just about networking; it's also about learning. So it's always been a pleasure to be here. And today I'm feeling very blessed that sitting on this panel and to my right, we have Mr. Anil Matai. Uh, he is right now Director General OPPI. When I when he came into my life, he was my super boss. So in Glaxo, so Mr. Matai has worked in GSK, Novartis, Zydus, and global healthcare at various levels leadership roles. So I'm calling Mr. Matai, but बीच बीच में sir निकल आ रहा है. So sir, pleasure to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Vikram. And you don't need to call me sir in this August audience. They'll feel that I'm an old, aged guy. I'm still mature, young.
Right, right. And there we have Mr. AMAL KELSHIKAR, another stalwart of the industry. And he's not been my boss or colleague, but AMAL, he's currently the executive director of India business of Torrent Pharma Limited. Very deep experience in these both spaces of nutraceuticals and pharma, right? He's worked in ANI, right? Abbott Nutrition, AstraZeneca, and now Torrent. So you have an experience in both the people who have worked multinationals, who have worked Indian companies, and who have worked across therapies and at leadership roles. Amal comes from I mean, I've seen him, not directly, but whatever I've heard of him and I've seen his work, he's like a turnaround specialist, transformation specialist. So, pleasure to have you, Amal, over here.
Thank you.
And the third person who we were supposed to have, unfortunately, he could not make it, Atish. So, Atish, you know what has happened in India in the last 24 hours. So, there have been certain flight schedules which have got delayed and rescheduled, and as a result there's a cascade impact on meetings. So it was absolutely unfortunate in the last minute that he could not make it, but we have a very strong panel over here, so we'll dive straight into the discussion. Now we are talking about, like in any discussion, it's a part of a learning. We come with a mindset that this is applicable to me, this is not applicable to me, right? हमारे इंडस्ट्री में ऐसा होता है, हमारे इंडस्ट्री में maybe this will not happen. But I think over here, why these two panelists are sitting over here, let's pick on their wisdom first, right? So they have all built global nutraceutical businesses. So my first question to Mr. Matai, I'll ask you is that we all know, and I think Mr. Ganesh Naik and Suresh were also alluding to the fact that India is known as the pharmacy of the world. It's a reputation which they've built up, very good reputation. So if India is to become the Nutribol of the world, what would be one or two lessons, according to you, Mr. Matai, which has helped Indian pharma to become pharmacy to the world, and maybe the audience here can take some lessons from that. One or two lessons in your view.
If you look at India and the pharmaceutical industry, because I've spent most of my life in the pharmaceutical industry, it's another thing that I started my professional career in this hotel, in this property from 82 to 85, I was here. So it's been a big transition from being here in 82 to 85 to what I'm doing now. But maybe you also didn't know it, but okay. But sharing my experience over last 35 years in the pharmaceutical industry, see, we saw three phases of evolution of the pharma industry in India. Post-independence, pharma industry was at a very nascent stage. Then in 1970s, when the Patent Act changed, we saw evolution of the Indian pharma companies and their big bang growth. until that time, mid-70s, the MNCs had close to 80% market share. Today, the MNCs have less than 20% market share, though I represent an MNC body here. But that's the kind of evolution which we saw. And then we saw a second phase of the industry, which happened in early 2000s when we saw exponential upscaling by Indian companies, whereby we became the pharmacy to the world. So last 20 odd years, we have been a pharmacy to the world. And we are now seeing a third phase where we are moving from volume to value. We are moving away from generics to an innovation-led growth. Now, I see a similar phase happening in the Nutra industry. Nutra industry was a bit late to get onto this journey, but I see a similar life cycle. And I see a big bang growth. I think as, both Tim and Dr. Ganesh Naik mentioned that the opportunity is out here in this market. What we need to learn from the pharmaceutical industry, which is still applicable and will remain applicable to the Nutra industry, is it needs to be still based on science, regulatory, and quality. So these are three areas I feel that if we are able to translate to the Nutra industry, we will have a firm foundation. The foundation is already there, but that foundation will only get stronger. So responding to your question of what could we take from pharma industry to Nutra industry, I feel that these are the three essential components: science, regulatory, and focus on quality.
Science, regulatory, and focus on quality. Amal, your view on this?
I couldn't agree more. He used to also be my boss at once upon a time, so I have to agree with him. No, I think besides the point, the three key milestone events that he talked about, which shaped the pharma industry. One was the 1970 Patents Act. With change in that, you saw, a generation of boom in generics, right?
Yes.
A significant one. And, just to give a number, from 2,000 companies at that point in time, to jump to 24,000, right? In 20 years. So you saw a number of them coming on the sheer basis of reverse engineering. That's what the local law allowed. And they leveraged that. And core to that was a couple of things. One was scientific talent pool. So there was always a talent. Two was, the regulations, of course, clearly supported that, but they also created infrastructure to manage this and quality infrastructure. And the fourth important thing, there was a risk taking, right? So you can have everything, but without risk taking, this would have not been possible. So, a lot of these companies, which are large Indian companies, which are established, and you look at their journey, probably they started as a stockist or an API manufacturer, or some of them, and then went up the value chain, many of them, right? So I think this was one. Second was 1995, when India's obligation on TRIPS agreement came in, and I think what they did was a balance between global obligations and ensuring domestic access is available. That's where you saw a jump in a little bit of a sophistication in terms of how this was done, anchoring towards biosimilars, complex generics. And the third phase has been, conquering the regulated markets, which required obviously a high quality infrastructure and obviously good scientific base, and obviously coming with innovations within that. Today we have 700 US FDA approved plants. 62% of vaccines globally is exported from here. And that industry is close to about $38 billion, right? So I think these are three phases. Now, if you do adapt, I fully agree. Nutra is completely at this stage very early stage, still nascent stage. And if I look globally, it's still evolving. So you cannot say that it's mature, because even if you look at some of the regulations which are there between US and Europe, there is a certain level of differentiation. So what has helped pharma? A structured approach, clear regulations, which was at the foundation of science that is talked about, the quality aspect, and innovation. I think all these things have definitely played. Obviously, there is a scientific talent pool which has definitely helped. But I think for Nutra to get to that scale, we would need a good regulatory environment to sharpen the regulatory environment and understand the regulatory session later on. There'll be more discussion. Definitely, lot more application of science, and we'll learn that a little bit later. And I think quality, no, there's no doubt you need a quality infrastructure. Without quality products, you cannot move ahead.
So that's interesting because even I mean in our pharma world, when we are even consulting with clients, they're telling our brand is very high quality, and we always stand up telling quality is a hygiene factor. The very fact that the doctor is allowing you to be there, it's a hygiene thing. Now, what is your point of differentiation on that? So I think what you mentioned as the one of the pillars is quality. You are either there or not. That is a foundation you build on. But sir, I just want to ask you one question, and I'm opening it to Amal also after this. You meant, yes, at a time when I also joined the industry, one division was a single. It had the number one market share. You know the company I'm talking about, sir. One division. And in the last 20 years, we have seen that the Indian companies have now become dominators. Is there a lesson? I mean, why? I mean, we know why, but why did it? What made Indian companies dominate? And is there a lesson for the Nutra entrepreneurs over here? Whereas multinationals, they had robust data, they had also good quality of products, they were originators. What do you think would be one or two things we could drop in? And this question is open to both of you.
One of the key factors for success is access. And of course, when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, globally it is where it is because of intellectual property protection.
Correct.
And unfortunately, in India, still the IP regime has loose. And as a result of that, very many times there is infringement which happens. So the global large MNCs have not really invested in the market in the true sense, if you look at the last 20 odd years. Because it was expected that the patent regime will be tight. It is much better. I have seen the needle move. I have seen how things were 30 years back and how it is now. It is much, much better. But when you draw a global comparison, today there was a lag of about 10 to 11 years between a global launch and an Indian launch.
Right. Yeah.
That is now shortened to about 4 years, but still there is a 4-year delay. So they have not really invested. Second one is in terms of access and reach. The Indian companies, by virtue of reverse engineering, could make the product much more affordable. And India being a self-pay market, it mattered because it's almost entirely a self-pay market. I mean, very few people are covered by some form of insurance. Of course, you now have Ayushman Bharat, which covers the bottom 40%, but that is only for hospitalization. So affordability and deeper reach within the country is what helped the Indian companies. Even now, if you see, a lot of global companies are partnering, collaborating, out licensing to Indian companies for tier 2, tier 3, 4 markets, because that's where the reach is there. I mean, if a global MNC has 1,000 medical reps, a large Indian company has 10,000. So the geographical reach is much wider, and that's the reason why we see this. And I think it was touched upon in the earlier sessions as well, that access, and here it is more distribution, how far you reach, that is important. That's the reason why, I mean, we see that diminishing market share.
Right. Thanks, sir. So there is a part of access, there is a part of what you call distribution reach, which comes in. And I think the point which you mentioned, sir, and this is for the those of us who are planning to go globally, that you have to invest deep into understanding the market. You cannot do it at a very surface level, right? And that is what I think the point which you're making, that the Indian companies were more deeper invested. Amal, over here, you talked about risk taking ability. In addition to this, would you say that maybe the Indian companies had a stronger entrepreneurial mindset or something.
Clearly, I think without the entrepreneurial mindset, you cannot move ahead. But I think there was a very structured approach, and the difference that I see even today when you look at nutraceuticals, you have a whole lot of companies out there, right?
Right.
The interesting part is the entire marketplace, online marketplace, has thrown up a different kind of access. Today the access is, you're going to target certain, whether it is cosmeceuticals or you get into nutraceuticals. So you have a lot of small players, and you see a whole lot of investments also being done by very established players into taking stakes that in future they grow up. So I think there is a certain level of risk taking, but I think the risk taking itself has to be very thoughtful, right? One is when you're talking of entrepreneurship, having a good understanding of the market, the products that you're bringing in, whom are they targeted for? Why will they buy your products? Who's your competitor? So what is the target market that you're going after? How are you cost effective compared to the competition? And the definition of the competition, the wider it is, the better understanding you have.
Got it.
I think where probably I see, and so you have a lot of players and you have a lot of failures right now currently, and in the past also must have been, because of course it's not visible. But you're seeing a limited success rate for the current Nutra players, entrepreneurs, is mainly because I think the focus on some of these aspects has not been sharp enough. And the basic tenets of understanding the market, whom are you targeting for, what problem the product is going to solve, and obviously core to that is building a very strong differentiation. One approach is, I strongly believe, personal opinion, is through science. Yeah, because that's the proof of the product, right?
Right. That's a proof.
I think that's important, and I don't think there is enough work being done, or maybe being done, but I don't think it is as structured when I'm comparing to pharma, right? The scale of clinical trials, right, and the kind of clinical trials, and you start digging a little bit into it and realize, oh my God, this is like so short-sighted, right? So I think there's a lot more understanding that needs to go in. So risk taking is there, yes. Entrepreneurial mindset, yes. You see it across industry, but I think there's far more deeper understanding that you need to be successful.
Reason why I actually asked this question is because you have worked or both of you work for multinational companies at leadership level. You work with owner-driven companies, very close with the owners. So there would be this pattern. I think these fundamental questions which you're talking about. What is the? I think which was even alluded to the past thing. What is your? Am I in love with the product because it is different, or is it actually fulfilling an unmet need? And the ability to then ask those simple but very powerful questions, and then maybe act on that to see whether it is there. But nobody cuts short on evidence building, right? That is not a option.
I don't think. I mean, at the end of the day, the prices that you charge for the product, the consumer is buying, right? There has to be, and they're not buying it because it's not a casual consumption. Most of it, let's try to understand, it's a serious consumption. It's trying to address some needs. So if they're going to pay the price they're going to pay, I think they're looking for certain value and benefit. In a pharma world, because of clinical trials, suppose you have, suffering from whatever pain, you take analgesic, and
Right.
and the headache goes away. You see the proof very immediately, right? Here, very often it takes time, and hence the trust needs to be built, and trust needs to be built through science, through studies and evidence, right? And I think that's where the entrepreneurs are falling short currently.
So no cutting corners there. That's one of the lessons which is there. So your question triggered. I'm sorry, sir. Your question triggered a very interesting thing. Now in pharma, we have two kinds of companies which have become very successful globally. One is a set of companies which have been built on a preferred supplier to B2B, and they've gone up. I mean, we know the companies which they are, but a lot of companies are ones which have built brands in India and then scaled up. Do you think, and you are mentioning that point, sir, that nutraceutical is still at a slightly more nascent stage. So if if a nutraceutical entrepreneur is sitting over here and he or she is thinking that I want to scale up, would you recommend that brand building or investment in marketing, whether we talk about corporate branding or branding, is a very, very important skill, or should he or she think of scaling up on what you talked about, the other aspects of it?
Well, I am pretty clear in my thought process on this because I firmly believe that, especially in nutraceuticals, brand building is utmost.
It is, of course.
It is utmost because it brings in resilience. If you have a strong brand, irrespective of the roadblocks which may come in, the consumer still has confidence in the brand.
Right, right.
So they will still continue to consume. So one is it builds resilience, second is recall remains, third is any kind of turbulences which are there, these brands are able to withstand those better. But how do you build brand? Brands are again to be built based on commitment of quality.
Absolutely.
Second is you haven't done any shortcuts for a quick launch because you've done all the desired trials so that you are able to gain the confidence of the consumer. So that is how the brand has been built. So there's a journey which the brand goes through, but in terms of the two options which you gave me, for me it's clear, it's brand building. But unfortunately, I mean, given our one is fragmentation and second is we haven't yet been able to build scale. We are yet to see 1,000 crore brand, and 1,000 crores is not very large. It's not very large in the Indian context. We are talking about $110 million US dollars.
Right, right.
So that's not very large. So I believe that's where a potential opportunity lies. And so, whether it is in the domestic market or ultimately you take it global, I think if you have a strong brand, you are on a firm footing.
And it's always easier or better to build a brand in your home market that it gives you some kind of, confidence or credibility. Would that, I mean,
Yeah, I think it goes
Sorry.
without.
No,
Sorry,
you can go ahead. No. It's not necessary that you do it in the home market.
Okay.
There are established success stories. Say if you take Dr. Mom, they built a brand. You may not have even heard of it, but it was the largest brand in Russia at that point of time
I don't know.
by a company called JB.
Okay.
So it depends where your strength lies. But yes, I mean, an easier way is you do it in your home market. But there is no formula that only if you are successful
right.
in the home market you will be able, because there are established brands which have been built overseas as well. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Just to build on it, I think it goes, and I'm sure everyone in the room will also agree. Branding is the way, right? Without having the brand, give resilience, it gives familiarity, continue. There are so many benefits. So clearly, to start with, at your home market or whichever market you have strengths. That example that he gave in Russia and for other markets, if you have strengths, you can start building. You need to build brands, right? There's no question, and there are enough examples. Scale in nutrition has been much better compared to other part of you say Nutra, where you have seen certain level of scale being built here. There have been attempts to take these brands outside of India. Success has been in the neighboring markets in Asia. But to take any brand, and I was thinking of this, on the way here, as I was entering Oberoi's. Yeah, so I was thinking, which is the brand really which is built in India, right? So we're known for our IT services as a brand.
IT services as a brand.
Yeah. May branded generics as a brand. But the only brand which came to my mind, which has truly gone global to some extent, is Taj. I know we are sitting here and thinking the other way, but the fact remains that it's not easy, right? The scale of investment required is of a different order, right? And how do you fund it? And you need the proof of performance, the proof of concept, right? Which you build in your home country. To take it to an international market and build that. If you're going to be successful in some of the developed markets, requires a different level of scale and investment. Everything that goes in building the brand, whether it's quality and the investment, understanding target consumers, what need it is,
right,
and so on and so forth. And assuming it can apply in a very generalized way, right? There's no reason why it can be done, but it's not an easy game, right? It's a heavy investment game, and and that's where you need to think through as to what you can do. So it's so we don't have far too many examples of brands from India which has gone global. Certain categories have.
Categories have, as you
Yeah.
said, the category have become like a branded category.
Yeah. Branded generics you take,
Right.
or you take, jewelry and that. In that, there is a certain level of dominance which is there. But creating a brand and then taking, of course, there's far more value addition that you get if you're able to do that. But that level of risk taking is, I believe, investment is of a very significant order.
Right.
And it needs to be done. I'm sure it will be done at some point in time. And there are enough examples globally that we have. I mean, look at neighboring China, look at BYD, right? It's giving Tesla run for money. So I'm just giving one example. So I'm sure that in India also, we will have brands, and within Nutra, definitely there is an opportunity. But you need to you need to win at home first. I believe very often, right? Not in all cases. If you started, you need to win at home before you go. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to and you cannot do abroad. You can take those chances, but then you need deep pockets.
Right. And it's what I think all of you always preach is fail fast, fail safe, and do it in a safer market where possibly. In fact, we are missing Atish over here, but you all are industry leaders. One of the companies like Mankind, which actually grew up taking one state at a time or two states at a time. Going very deep. Where we are talking about in our pharma world, we talk about X number of people. Mr. Matai was talking about multinational versus Indian deployment of talent, feet on the ground. Uh, that company believed in saturating one region. So go very deep in building that grassroots before you take the next step to the next region. I think that's a philosophy they follow even today. Uh, so the point which when we're talking about branding and marketing, the reason why I ask this, and I'll be very upfront in this, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I sell brain, whatever little or more I have. And we have entrepreneurs who sitting over here who invest into deep, very capital investment into uh, excellent manufacturing facilities. Maybe after that, what you mentioned, sir, there are no shortcuts. So quality ka part ho gaya. But do they? You are also saying they should view R&D and evidence as an investment as part of the capital expenditure also. And somewhere I feel, and this is only my view, that marketing and branding gets pushed out. What could be the barrier? Is it like we come from a marketing background, but if you are typically talking founders who are techno commercial who are doing this, why is it that it gets missed out? Is it the experience or is it the vision?
You need a very different mindset, because it's not necessary that you are a good manufacturer means you have to be necessarily a good marketer.
Agreed.
But today, if you see, most success stories have come out of collaboration. So these good manufacturers who have got good facilities, have evidence backing their claims. What prevents them from collaborating with an established marketer? You don't need to reinvent the wheel and make investments into marketing.
Right.
So we have seen it in the pharma world as well. I remember in 2008 when Galvus was getting launched in India, and I was at Novartis that time, which was not so strong in diabetes. And then Novartis partnered with 3 companies in India who were strong in diabetes, and as a result of that, Vildagliptin, which was the molecule, Galvus was the brand. There are several brands now, and it became, the molecule crossed 1,000 crores within a short span of time, which would not have been possible had Novartis stuck to its guns and said, no, it's my patented molecule and I'll keep it to myself. So they realized that there are other strong partners, and yes, we should partner. So I feel that in this field, in the nutraceutical field, it's not necessary that you do everything on your own. If you have the capabilities, the wherewithal, the investments which are required, you might as well do it, but it may take you much longer. So it may be better to do a collaboration
Right.
with a strong player who's good at marketing,
And they
who
will
has the reach.
who has the reach and the access, and they will only do the collaboration if during the manufacturing, what you mentioned, the three pillars, there is no shortcuts in that.
So there, I already said you have got a good manufacturing facility. You've got evidence-based claims which you are making. Because why companies fail? Because they make claims which they are not able to establish, and then you lose consumer confidence. Unlike pharmaceuticals, here you are selling direct to the consumer. Your customer is direct the consumer. In pharma, our customer is the doctor. The consumer is the patient. So there we have to convince the doctor. But here, if the consumer who's buying your product is not convinced of the claims which you are making, you may not see the brand getting built, or you may not see the kind of growth which you envisage.
Interesting. Interesting. So I mean, again, a trigger from this, and Amal, this question goes to you. Is this possible? Ke mere ko to I have to sell it to consumers. So I am not going to talk about studies and this there. If I believe my product is good, I need to get them to try out the first time. If after the first time they get a good experience, then they will continue for using it. Why do I need to invest in clinical trials?
Yeah, so I think I'll catch your word good experience. Yeah. So what is that good experience we are talking of, right? So again, going back to the point, they are buying the product with a certain belief that it will give a benefit, whatever that is, right? Now, one can convince that in case of nutraceutical that you need to take it for 6 months before you start seeing the benefit. All that, even if you get consumers who are compliant and do that, I think the product finally has to work. We can do all razzmatazz and marketing and everything, but when rubber hits the road, when the product is in hand of the consumer and when the consumer takes it, it has to work. That's it. And what is the basis of that? And if you have enough scientific evidence studies, now, taking the example of pharmaceutical, you have clinical trials, large scale clinical trials, which
Right.
proves end outcomes, what the benefit. And that's where you want to talk to a doctor and talk about, make those claims. Here, largely, a lot of claims are made on structure, function, on ingredients. While our regulators are now operating on ingredient-based claim and structured nutraceuticals, but I think there is a lot more. There are two areas that we need to do. One is do more studies on these ingredients. Well, if I said laid down that what is allowed and not allowed, but what is allowed within that, are we doing enough studies and prove the concept, what it can be, what it will prove, which is believable and we know it works, so that when you go out and market it, it's done with confidence, right? And I think that's important. Second is that, and this requires a little bit more, when you have the finely formulated products, because it's a combination of number of ingredients, right? You also, I believe, you need to do some studies to prove, because that is what in the end the customer is going to consume, right? And I think having that evidence definitely helps. Otherwise, you're selling a dream, right? And dreams can crash, can become nightmare very easily.
Right. In fact, not quoting over here what the point which you're mentioning. So uh, we had a person who had approached us for you know for consulting, and I said, how do we know that your product works? Well, I've given it to my friends and family members, and it works. So I think the point, and while it is fine, I mean, friends and family members, and here I'm just digressing a bit, which we always say that they love you very much, right? So they would give a feedback which is there. But I think the point which Mr. Matai and Amal are making, apart from communicating to the giving confidence to the customer, I think the clinical trial first gives confidence and authenticity to you. Today is a world about authenticity. Are we having the confidence? And it is possible that what I think Amal was mentioning, a very structured process, and what no shortcut, what Mr. Matai was mentioning, that when you go through that process, what I assume, what I don't assume, everything, it gets highlighted, and it makes you much more, what do you say, sensitized to what you said when the rubber hits the road. Great. I'm learning more for my business also from here when I'm picking your brains, that how do I scale up? Okay. Uh, this is a slightly touchy question. Nahi touchy. Last one nahi hai, sir. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, right? I'm an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurs. You have worked with entrepreneurs. What is that one ingredient? I know this is not an easy question to answer, which says, see, this entrepreneur made it big. And the reason I'm asking you because you've had a ringside view to a lot of entrepreneurs. एक होगा calculated risk taking, एक होता है कि no shortcuts. But what is that one thing which says that, okay, you see, this is the company that got built up, or this, what is the founder's trait?
I think in any entrepreneur you need certain quality traits to first to venture out on your own. You need that risk taking ability,
Right, risk taking
and entrepreneurship, and you need to be enterprising, network resourcing, everything. But I think some of the successful ones do two things very well. All this is hygiene, what I talked about, right? Risk taking, everything. One is they really try to understand the market well and what product they are coming up with. They're extremely passionate about it. And of course, you can then fall in love with the product and then be blindsided. But that's, and they're good at that, not getting blindsided. Okay, so that's the first thing. They're really trying to understand what is the market, what is the total available market, what's the TAM that I'm going after, what it will take for me to win in that market, what kind of capabilities I need, and being humble along the journey, saying that I will not be able to do everything, right? I will need to bring in certain capabilities to support me in this journey, whether it is manufacturing, technology, marketing, e-commerce, whatever, right? Everything, regulatory. And these guys do second thing, they, I think, get great teams together, right? And make it happen. So it's not one individual. One individual you need to lead, right? Have that idea, thought, and build on it. And also improvise and improve as you get feedback. So that's why being staying humble and get feedback and improve. But I think also they do a great job of building a good team, which makes it happen. Entrepreneur is always the face that you see, but there is a lot more the team behind.
Yes.
That does some great work. And it doesn't have to be some superstars. We have enough examples, some ordinary people coming together and doing extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely. And where technically the labels and the badges.
Yeah. The typical problems, what happens, some of the entrepreneurs is that they want to do it for various reasons, and I'm sure they have their own good reasons, want to do everything on their own. And it's a much harder learning curve. Now, unless your financer is willing to let you live through and continue to finance you in that journey, it may not be easy. So I think being very practical and correct in this approach, being humble along the way helps a lot.
Great. I'll take Mr. Matai. What about you?
I'll have a very short answer because here, in the context of the people sitting out here and in the context of the discussions we are in the midst of, I would say we are selling a product.
Right.
The entrepreneur's focus. So for me, if there is one thing to be said in a short sentence, it's a quality product with a substantiated claim is the pillar of success. One of the key pillars
of the success
for an entrepreneur.
Right. And any amount of packaging on that without that pillar that's the foundation. Whether you want to build a 3-story building or you want to build a 30-story building or you want to build a 50-story building. Great. I think I picked your brains enough. And any last thoughts on this? Then I'll summarize and I'll tell you what did I pick up, and I hope we can maybe have a few Q&As also if we have time. Any last thoughts? For a entrepreneur, nutraceutical entrepreneur over here who wants to build up a business. They've already built businesses, but scale it up.
I think kind of, between what Mr. Matai said and what I tried to summarize also is clearly you need, a good idea, no shortcuts, quality products, try to focus on building evidence, look for good partnerships, because you cannot build everything on your own. And it's a journey where you will it's a good time. Firstly, I believe that I think the nutraceutical market is evolving. If you look at 10 years back, it was much harder. Today, the acceptance of the consumer is much more. So you have more receptive consumers, right? And I think leveraging that correctly with the right products, right quality products, no question, becomes important. But it's a journey, and so the entrepreneurs I met are extremely smart, well learned, educated, no question, they understand. But this is a different game, right? You can have great product, but you may not still be successful. I think trying to understand and learn from those becomes important. So I think it's for them it's a journey, sticking it out. I think some of the guys who have been really successful have seen failures along the way. There's no one who just had a straight line, right, going up.
Of course.
So they had their ups and downs, but if fail fast, fail cheap, one principle, and being very quick and agile in terms of making those changes to adapt to the market and the consumer becomes important. So keeping the consumer at the center of every thought process and decision making is the core, right?
Right.
You can't go wrong with that.
Right. Right. So
in addition to what Amal said, I mean, having spent 4 decades, maybe a decade lesser than Mr. Naik, I would say that India is at the cusp of a major transformation, and it offers humongous opportunities for entrepreneurs to tap that potential. And that can be effectively done if we focus, or if we ensure. We spoke of what to do, I'm saying what not to do is don't compromise on ethics, values, and compliance. Because if that happens, the success is short lived. Even if you have to go global, I think what matters most is these three factors. If your ethics, values, compliance are good, and even your behavior, you are able to build good teams. Because with that, and capitalize on this transformation which is happening within our country. Because this period may not last for too long with what is happening in the geopolitical tensions.
Yes.
But I see that despite of what has happened across the border in the last day or two, India still will hold humongous potential. I'm repeating the word humongous potential. So it has to be necessarily tapped in the next 2-3 years.
And that tapping is to be by taking no shortcuts.
Yeah.
And also, I think there is enough that one can leverage in terms of our local science, right? To look at, I think, ashwagandha and curcumin extensively being used in Nutra products.
Right.
Ashwagandha probably is known in US and Southeast Asia, probably not so much in Europe, but one can take one of those, do far more in-depth clinical work and build that. Just as an example, I'm sure there are many more that our guys know out here.
Right.
There's a lot more. Pick up something that you believe you will have a differentiator.
Right. So I think quickly summing up, at first, any questions which you all have? Any questions? Yes, please. We'll take 2 questions.
Thank you. I'm Kanta Shalke, and I am an entrepreneur and also a professor at Johns Hopkins, where I'm helping launch the first university course in the safety regulation of dietary supplements. Because I believe that supplements have a very, very big opportunity to take India from being where they are today to being the #1 supplier to a country or to a market that relies on it and is going to rely on it much more. So your supplement industry, you're a big, resource for the Western world. There is something missing, and that is trust. Trust that it will work, trust that it was launched or created with integrity, and trust that it will do no harm. Those are the oaths that you usually take if you're in the medical profession, particularly if you're a physician. What can we do as supplier, as innovators, to get that message across to the rest of the world that India is a reliable supplier of something that is good for you and that will keep chronic conditions at bay.
I'm fully aligned with you and echo your thoughts in totality. That trust is something which needs to be gained. And when you have to gain trust, it starts with the product. It starts with your quality infrastructure, your manufacturing infrastructure and quality consciousness which is there. And also evidence-based claims which you are making, both regarding your product and its efficacy. So if we do all of these, I know there have been issues in India in the recent past when it came to cough syrups, there have been deaths which has dented the reputation of the country. But even if you look, because I interact with the regulators, so to a large extent the regulators are also ensuring that the manufacturing facilities become WHO compliant. So all units in India which currently have a turnover of Indian rupees 250 crores, which is, I'm not very good in dollar million terms, is say 35-40 million dollars. They will have to cease manufacturing if they don't comply with the WHO standards. So that time given is till end of this year. So we are working, but being a democratic country and with a large segment being in the MSME sector, so the gentleman is not there, that's where we need to really, the larger companies need to do hand holding and upgrade and upscale and upskill these facilities. So we are going through the transition phase. The realization is there that we need to gain trust, we need to have better quality. The perception will only thereafter improve because it's a perception and perception has to be based on a fact. So that is what is currently, but the point which you are making is 100% true, and we are conscious of the fact, fully seized of it, and the journey has begun. And that's why I use the word transformation, because I see that these things are going to happen and going to happen fairly soon. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, just to build on it, there's no question in terms of quality infrastructure. What you need is also stronger regulations supporting this, right? Which makes, firstly, very clear what is allowed, not allowed. The structured approach definitely, just learning from pharma definitely has helped. Two is quality manufacturing standards, but also at scale. Without scale, you'll not get a cost advantage. Yeah. So for someone to build scale is important. Thirdly, I believe, and I'm not too familiar, you need something, formation of Nutra Export Council centrally, which will kind of certify who are the reliable suppliers. So if you are looking at us from supplier quality point of view, right? Some central body, which I'm sure exists, but probably focused towards exports, then you need Nutra Export Council, something to that effect established, which will give it far more credibility, because then the check and balances and everything is through that system, which ensures consistency, because one is quality, but also doing it over a period of time consistently. That's a bigger ask.
I'm sorry, I'll have to cut short the question because Mr. Matai also has a meeting, but we can always connect offline later if there's something. And I would just like to summarize. I think I'll tell you what I took back as an entrepreneur. If I'm building a business and scaling it up, don't take shortcuts. Number one. Number two, it's not only about how good your product is, but you're not building it, it's how you also talk about it and what is the experience of the product. Number three, when you don't take any shortcuts and when you do the deep understanding, it gives you confidence before you must have confidence before you give confidence, your customer has the confidence. And last but not the least, whichever market you're going, you look for collaborations. Don't try to do everything yourself. Look for collaborations who have deep insight into the market and stake in the market. I think that's, so this session was not about knowledge only. I think it was about wisdom. So thank you, Mr. Matai. Thank you, Amal, for sharing your wisdom. It's been a pleasure having you over here. And thank you so much, Nutrify, for giving us this opportunity.